Well, hello everyone. Happy TGIF. It is absolutely gorgeous out, so I'm working outside again today. And yesterday's, really, the one that I did on the half plop of mums planting versus plopping, probably raised more questions than it answered. So for FAQ Friday, I'm all full of acronyms today, I thought it might be helpful if I just walked through the garden and answered some of those questions that you have and explain a little bit more about my fall decor theory for this year, how I normally do it, and then how it's going to be changed a little bit. So I'm going to be working on the porch. I've kind of decked out the flower bed in the front, and now I'm going to start styling the porch. I'm going to wait just a little bit because I'm going to be removing these white caladiums from the window box and replanting the window box. And what I'm going to do is save these caladium tubers for next year. Once the soil temperatures get below 45 degrees, I believe it is, then for my zone, zone 7, I really need to bring them in. So I'll do a whole video on that, on storing them, and then how I replant the window box. But I'm going to probably wait until this weekend to do that. So, and I have my flat violas over here that are getting a little bit leggy. I'm going to cut those back and then I'll plant them. So I've still got pretty much to do on the porch. Now, in the past, I have been a little bit more enthusiastic about styling my porch for Halloween and such, but this year, because there won't be trick-or-treaters that are going to be coming up onto the porch, I'm putting more of my jack-o'-lanterns, all of that, instead of directly on the porch, I'm putting them out into the landscape so that people can enjoy them a little bit more without having to have close proximity to my house, if that makes any sense. So if you'll follow me, you can see that I've got my hose out because I will be watering again today. Now, temperatures have really cooled, and that's great for these mums. So probably one question you guys really asked was, let's come around this way, Stuart, if we can, is what am I going to do with my mums once they're finished? So first of all, I don't normally buy this many mums for the front yard. I went a little bit wild this year. Because of COVID, I really wanted to have a display that was a little bit more exaggerated in the front so people could enjoy it as they walk and go by. I normally will have like 3 large clumps of mums, not this many. So historically in the past, I just take my half plop mums and I remove them. And after they finished blooming and they're done, I will cut them back pretty hard and I'll replant them in the back border to the extent that they're still healthy and they're not so root bound that I think they'll take hold. And the ones that I have in the back border are mostly the traditional kind of autumnal hues. They're orange, they're yellow, they're dark red, and I'll show you that in another video. These are all white. Now, I love that, and probably what I'm going to do with these is once they are finished blooming, and again, I bought them all in really tight bud form because mums just really don't last that long. So I enjoy every phase of them in tight bud form, and then as they just start opening, Stuart, if you can show how the progression of bloom, they just start opening. And they will look this way, and actually my favorite perspective of them is when they are about half open. So because the temperatures have cooled, that will ensure that the flower buds themselves last a little bit longer. But once they're finished, I will cut them back hard. I will probably really loosen up the root ball, and if I think the root ball is not so compacted that it's still viable, then I think this year what I'm going to do is plant them in huge black plastic pots that I can then overwinter and plop into the landscape when I'm ready to use them again next fall. The ones that are so compacted and so root-bound and distressed, they're just kind of one-shot wonders. Those I'll probably just put and relegate to the compost pile. So that's what I'm going to be doing with all of them this year. Now, I also have some friends who do all white gardens, and probably I will also gift some of these to them. Now, a number of you brought up this, and I so appreciate that you did. If these were planted, and the ones that I have in my back border, they're planted into the ground just like a regular perennial, and then they will bloom in late spring, early summer. Then I chop them back and keep them chopped back until about July 4th. Then I let them continue to grow, and they will put out a second bloom in time for fall. So that is kind of the progression of bloom for these as a perennial that are planted into the ground. So that was another frequently asked question that you guys have. The other thing that I wanted to address are all of my pumpkins. So these, and I should have done a video on it, but I've had some of these for years and I didn't do it. But these are just those inexpensive orange pumpkins that I have spray painted with some kind of, for the most part, hammered spray paint to simulate the look of galvanized metal. Some of them have kind of a rosemary colored finish. Whatever patina that you want, you can find a spray paint. You can make them look like stone. You could make them look like almost anything just with a coat of spray paint. Now, this big guy, a number of you asked about him. He too started out orange, and you can see that some of that orange is peeking out. Now, I just spray painted him, and then I took some sandpaper and I roughed up around the edges because I wanted a little bit of orange to poke through to kind of be a color echo of the orange pumpkins that I had. It almost looks a little bit like wood. So I spray painted that. I spray painted just a little bit of a veneer of tiny spots of black so they look kind of aged. This one, Stuart, don't you think it almost looks like wood? But these other ones I have had for years, you guys, and the only thing that I've had to do is just replace the bulbs. Now, I intentionally have not covered up my electrical cords because I wanted to show you kind of what my setup for this is. And you can see that these guys are still lit up. So how I do it is I have some of these cords, most of them from the street you can't see. And usually, as I said, these pumpkins would be on my porch, not this far out into the landscape. So obviously I've got to get power to them with a long heavyweight extension cord that's weatherproof. And then these other wires, these white wires, what I'll do is I'll get some of my favorite Happy Grow soil conditioner mulch, and I'll just kind of mulch over those white cords so you kind of can't see them. But again, from the street, you really can't see them anyway. Now, what I've got here, hidden behind this pumpkin, they're plugged into a surge protector that's then connected to a weatherproof extension cord. and I've got that exposed. Now what I'll do is cover that up with a plastic bag or something so that it won't be prone to any rains we get, the sprinkler system or whatever, and it will protect it. So that's kind of my setup with my jack-o'-lanterns. But again, all of these are just those inexpensive pumpkins. A lot of times if I want more, I buy them at the end of the year after they go on sale. And so I have assembled a little family of these kind of galvanized metal jack-o'-lanterns over the years. One of the reasons that I do that is because I think pumpkins, like tulips, really to be most effectively displayed, you need to have masses of them so that you get that effect of a pumpkin patch. And Stuart's kind of nodding his head. But if you buy this many pumpkins, you guys, it can really be expensive, because unlike some of you that grow your own, I don't, and I have to buy all of these pumpkins. And some years they're more expensive than other years, but nevertheless it can be an investment, especially when you add on the price of the mums. So that's one of the reasons I like to have some enduring pumpkins in my jack-o'-lanterns that I use year after year after year. And I can go big or I can go small. I can go overboard or not with the number of pumpkins and mums that I have for a fall display. Again, because this year I had very little seasonal color. I'm really wanting color in my fall garden right now. That is why I'm doing a little bit more of a fall garden bonanza in front. And also because so many people are out walking right now that I want to give them something to look at and something to smile at when they walk by. So I promise to show you all of this again when all of these mums are in full bloom. Now, I don't know how many people asked what this purple stuff is. This purple stuff is a member of the Spiderwort family. Tradescantia, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Pallidea, I think. And it's just like that seed of autumn joy. You can break off a section of it and just propagate it. See how dry that is, you guys? I need to water. Propagate it by just sticking it into the ground, just like that seed of autumn joy. So I am always sharing this with friends. But I love the way I have clumps that rhythmically run from the street, run the border, and they run around the circumference of the bed line until there's not enough light to support it. What I also love about this stuff is in early spring, it is it's very timid, it's very shy, you don't see it, and then it comes out as it gets hotter and the summer progresses, so it helps the garden evolve and always have something new. And I think this deep purple is going to look spectacular against the white mum. Now the other reason that I like it is because not only does it evolve and progress in terms of size, but I love it because as the summer progresses and it gets more sun, it turns a deeper purple. And because it's so easy to propagate, I can at any point in time, again, share it with others. I can stick it in my compost pile. It roots readily, and it is really a wonderful, tough perennial that comes back year after year. And all of these clumps came from just one plant that someone shared with me. So that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love it. Another question that you guys had, and I have answered this before, but I'll answer it again, are about my Eugenia topiaries. Now those are not frost hardy, and I do have to bring them in. So I do that every year. These are about 4 to 5 years old. And there were lots of questions about the different varieties of boxwood. All of these boxwood are different varieties. I never met a boxwood I didn't like. There's a good number of Green Mountain and Winter Gem up front, and you can see that I kind of prune some of them, and I don't prune others of them. And I just like the way they look. And by the way, you guys, all of these evergreens, one of the reasons that I plant so many of them is they look this good even in the summertime, or excuse me, in the wintertime. They also look good in the summertime. So they really kind of ground the landscape, and they look beautiful when it snows, and they've got that little white, the white tufts of snow on top. Now, someone asked me if I could describe how I decide, not necessarily where I plant my big structural furniture evergreens like the hollies and things, but how do I decide where I'm going to plant these boxwood balls that are just scattered throughout the landscape? Well, I do it, again, according to that design principle of rhythm and repetition across a space. So you can see that though it's not exactly equally distanced, that I've got a number of them that just run around the front of the border, and then they run back through the landscape so that there is a similar visual weight everywhere based on the evergreens, the evergreen boxwoods. And then, because there's room in between them, that's where I can have my seasonal color. Did I add all of these at once in one fell swoop? No, I did not, for a couple of different reasons. I didn't realize I wanted so much of them or I liked them as much until I had such success with them. Secondly, I didn't do it because it could have been kind of expensive. A lot of these I bought on sale, and then I would just look at my landscape and say, oh, there's a void there. I think I'll add another one there. So these have been added over time. They have grown significantly over time, and most of these started out as 1 gallon or 2 gallon plants. So that's the answer to that. Someone was asking what had been back here that's now been laid low. All of these were Shasta daisies that I cut back really hard, and a lot of the stems, a lot of the foliage had gotten buggy, so I cut it back really hard, and I didn't want it to be a distraction from everything else. So that's why I did that. And don't you just love this really pretty color repetition of this dark purple in the front, and then the dark purple of some Absession nandinas, that's a southern living plant, and the Laura petalum in the back. This, by the way, happens to be a dark purple crepe myrtle that next year I think I'll prune it so that it bushes out a little bit more and isn't quite so straggly. So that answers a lot of those kind of questions. There's other things in here that I'm going to be doing that I will talk to you guys about later. Some of you say more work, less talk. So I will show you some of the additional work that I have going on right now. But I'm not going to disturb this section too much more other than hiding some of my cords. And then finally, a lot of you asked about the outfit I had on yesterday, and do I always dress up when I work out in the garden? I don't always dress up when I work out in the garden, but it doesn't prevent me from working out in the garden. And so that's why sometimes my attire looks a little bit more fancy than it would at other times. But none of my clothing is really expensive or really precious, so I worry if it gets dirty or mucked up. I really believe in using all of my apparel, whether it was expensive or not. Because I think I read somewhere that a piece of clothing is only worn an average of 5 times in a woman's closet in the United States, and that is not very eco-friendly, and it's also not very cost-effective. So I try to really wear what I have. If you're interested in any of my outfits or whatever, I discuss that on LVTV, and you can subscribe there, and I talk about the sourcing and everything for my clothing. So that is, Stuart, have I forgotten anything else that people asked me? I'm sure I probably have, but I will try to address it again next week. And I promise when all of these are in their full glory and it's at dusk, I'll have the jack-o'-lanterns lit, and we'll come back and revisit this whole space. And Stuart, if you don't mind kind of just backing up a little bit, there's not a car coming. And so people will see what it looks like from the street and what it will look like when it gets closer to Halloween. You guys have a great Friday.